interesting that Popper makes a mistake, contradicts himself in his whole outlook. It's like a self-exclusion fallacy. He thinks something can apply to this stuff, but it doesn't apply to me, or it doesn't apply to certain things because I don't want it to. He says experiences can motivate a decision, and hence an acceptance or rejection of a statement, but a basic statement can not be justified by them, no more than thumping the table, unquote. So, and he's thinking about like sciences and stuff like that, but notice when he's saying that, he's expecting language and ideas to be necessary. He's expecting things like written words, which are visual, spoken words, which are auditory, or braille, which is haptic, haptic, having to do with touch. He's expecting them to be what they are, nothing more, nothing less. They have an identity, they have cause-effect relationships. He's trying to say experience does not, you don't find necessity in experience. You can't justify causality following Hume in experience. But then he's expecting this, or he's expecting experience, motivate, justify, science, scientific community to mean something and to cause a certain thought in your head. Experiences can motivate a decision. Horses, green, jump, river, tree. Is that what it means? Because like you can't be sure, and you can't say in all cases. You can't generalize. You got to apply the thing. If you're going to be consistent and real and true, and we're not crazy, we got to apply this consistently. Experience is experience. Reality is reality. We can't pick and choose what we want and ignore other stuff. We can't. You can't do like a magic trick and like hide something and like fool people to think this is what's going on and ignore this other thing or say squirrel. We have to get this in principle and apply it everywhere. If experiences like can't justify things and it's untrustworthy and unreliable, well then that's the way it is for everything, including statements, thought, decisions, writing, speaking. We can't trust it. If you can't form a generalization, then you can't say that experience is experience all the time. And remember, we're talking about fundamentally. We are not, Popper is not talking about what people know on a common sense basis from experience, looking at reality and cause-effect relationships and looking at necessity. He's not talking about what we know of, for example, we know that if someone doesn't know the English language, they won't know what experience is. And again, that's a matter of causality in experience and a thing acting according to its nature and interacting with the world. So if someone doesn't know the language, then they won't know what experience means. Maybe they can say the word, but they don't know the thing. We know that there's cause-effect relationships. We don't talk to rocks, at least not sane, rational people. And maybe you can talk to a rock for pretend, but we don't talk to a rock expecting a rational conversation to the rock as such. Because a rock cannot reason or think. It is not conscious, it is not alive, it is not animal, it is not human, it doesn't have a rational faculty. But we have to be talking to a human, someone who knows English, someone who knows the word experience and what it means, not just the word, because people can learn words, not their meaning. People can be in a spelling bee and know how to spell a word, but not have the concept that the word was coined for, to stand for, and to call up in our minds, and to allow us to have something to grab to work with that mental concept, that mental thing, that unification of a bunch of things: table, dog, cat. So when you got the idea, and I've always seen him talking German in videos, so I don't know if he can do English. This is a translation, I think. But, experience and whatever the German word is, when he uses it, he expects experience to cause certain things in our minds. And he expects there to be a causal relationship between the words of a sentence to make a proposition, to have certain ideas in our mind, to have understanding with what he's saying. Communication. And so it's contradicting what he's saying. Like, how can we rely on experience if there's no necessity? Does this word always cause a certain thing? The word call up a concept in our minds when we have the language and blah, blah, blah. We have the word, or does it not? And we're like awake and stuff like that and processing, and not forgetting, when you got the right conditions, just like no one blames electricity for not getting them water. Electricity is what it is. Things operate under certain conditions in a certain context. We can use PV equals nRT within certain conditions, and it's valid. It's a total waste of time. It is not worth the effort. It doesn't give us any differences in conclusions on a macroscopic level in some context to go to the van der Waals equation with modifying PV equals nRT for pressure and volume and all this stuff. Total waste because of pressures and temperatures and the conditions. Things are what they are. Same thing here. Or like, we can become hungry in certain conditions when we smell some good food. Smelling the food doesn't always make us hungry. There's got to be this causal context, these causal connections that are there and occur. Same thing here. So when that's there, experience means what it is. That's a fact. We know that from experience. And experience does justify that idea about language and thinking. And so he's wrong there. It's like contradicting himself. He's like saying one thing, but then totally denying that to language and thought and communication and dealing with people. He's saying something and he's expecting that to cause certain ideas in your head, knowing the complex context for human knowledge. It doesn't show, oh, he's right, it's sometimes true. No, it's a necessary causal context. Like I say, only a fool talks to someone in a coma and expects to have a conversation. When someone's in a coma, they are not going to be able to process and converse. And note we said process and converse because they might process to some extent or hear on some kind of level, but that's not what we're talking about here. Talking about processing and communicating back and things like that. But there's something as I say, we need to think of. We got to look at the scope of a generalization and a claim. What does empirical mean in experience? Where do things occur? In language, thought, and causality. Causality, necessity. Those things need to be looked at in terms of language and communicating, and his ideas too. You know, he's expecting experience always to mean experience in his own mind. He's expecting a basic statement cannot be justified by them to be what it is all the time in his mind. And when he communicates it to other people. But, you know, then he is, again, trying to deny this stuff. So that's another place where he fails. That's something we should do when we're reading things like this. Dewey, Kant, Popper, Kuhn. You know, think about it in terms of thought and language too, and don't let him get away with that. Like if something is based on convention, how do you know this convention? How do we get the concept? You know, we got to have some things in contrast to others. If there's an observable reality, we have to know it. Things like that. We got to step back and look at a bigger picture and assess what's going on. So the main thing is think about causality and identity in terms of, or in context of language and communication and thinking and logic itself too. Don't get carried away with thinking about it as only in the material world. Peace.